Your late 20s are an interesting time because despite the fact that a lot of things are evolving and improving, you still can feel left behind or worry about the next decade and life beyond 29. But I can comfortably say, now being in my late 20s and comfortably so, that this has been a period of immense evolution and enjoyment and just leveling up my life in ways that I probably couldn't have imagined at the beginning of my 20s. But it hasn't been without its challenges. I mean, seeing everything from my career flourish, my channel, my hobbies, my confidence, connections, relationships. And in this video, I actually want to share some of the things that I think are key to thriving in your late 20s and really enjoying and getting the most out of this period, but also setting yourself up for, the rest of our hopefully very long lives. So let's just get into it. The first thing, and I think it's really important that you deep this when you're in your late 20s, kind of throughout your life, but especially at this kind of crucial point in your life, is that you can't be afraid to live the life that you actually want to and strive for that, and not what other people are telling you. In your late 20s, you are going to be bombarded with people or, ideas about how you should be living your life. From relationships, marriage and children to careers, where you should be in all of these areas of your life. Like, oh, you're traveling quite a lot, you should really be stable, or you're stable, you're not doing quite of a lot. Like you're in your 20s still, you should be doing more, and everyone is going to be telling you all these things that you should be doing. You have to calm the noise and focus in on the life that you actually want to live. Because at the end of the day, it is only you who has to continue to live this life, not everybody else. Not anyone who says, to have a baby now or not have a baby now, or climb the career ladder or don't. It's just only you. And in your late 20s, I've at least found that this has become even more crucial for me as I realize how precious time is, seeing how fast this decade is going. And, I still have a long life. And this is to say, I'm still very young. And if you're in your late 20s, or around that age, you're still incredibly young in the grand scheme of your life. But each year is passing really quickly. And it's really important that you're living your life and don't allow fear and other people's ideas about the life you should live dictate how you kind of move through this period. Leading on from that, what I found is really important in your late 20s for thriving and, building the life that you want is start executing on those big dreams, those dreams that you may have had from younger, or maybe they're more recent dreams, but now is not the time to be playing small. Again, leading back to that point where you're still very young and you have so much life ahead of you, but you have more experience. If you have read the book, The Defining Decade, or watched my video series on it, then you'll be familiar with the phrase identity capital. And that's kind of what you've been building throughout your 20s at this point, or your early 20s and your teens, whether it's through your work, volunteering, the skills you've been building, like the connections, like you were building an identity and capital that you can use. And I think it's time to start, cashing in that capital in your late 20s. I don't think you need to wait until you're 30 to start perhaps building that business or asking for that raise and promotion, or, starting to think about that family. Like now is the time to start cashing that in my opinion. And it means pushing yourself past those boundaries that you may already have in your head about the life that you're living or what's okay for you and what you should ask for. I think as you progress through your 20s and arrive here, your confidence grows in your ability, or the audacity that you have to ask for more and demand more from life is there. So now is the time to execute. For me, it meant taking this channel and this community that I have been building over the years and that I'm so proud and so happy to be, a part of. But I was it's time to take this to the next level, which is why I had my in-person event in London, just a few weeks ago, and it went amazing. The feedback, insane. The energy, it was just incredible. But it was just a testament to okay, you have these dreams, you have these ideas that you have, let's execute on them. We have the confidence, we have the capital that we've been building. We're not waiting around anymore. We've been doing the work. It's time to start living in the next stages effectively. And I will say, even if you're sitting in your late 20s or around this period and thinking, there hasn't been a lot that I've achieved, and I don't actually believe that, because if you've got to this stage in life, by virtue of just getting to this point, you've been through some stuff, you've worked through some stuff, you've built skills, you've built connections. So I'm not really having that one. But look back at what you've done and think, if I have accumulated all of these skills, resources, experiences, it's time for me to tap into them, right? Even if you're not the most confident right now, look back at that. Look back at your whole effectively portfolio of life and draw on those experiences to drive you forward. The next thing that has helped me thrive in my late 20s and I think is really useful is an appreciation for quality. The reality is you understand that quantity is not really what we're going for here. We want quality. We want quality experiences, quality travel, quality skincare, quality food, right? Like the real appreciation for the substance within the thing, right? Everything from people to products to whatever it is. And at this stage in life, again, going back to the point, and you'll hear me repeat this probably throughout, that you are still very young. And so you want to be invested in things that are going to help you live a long, healthy life with that appreciation for time passing. Like, yes, I want to put healthy foods and like high quality food in my body, or high quality experiences, right? Or like high quality, maybe it's a gym membership that allows you to kind of go to other classes that you wouldn't have gone before. So the quality of that kind of membership is higher and it's worth the investment. And I think one thing that you realize when you do invest in high quality things and appreciate them is that you save money in the long term, because often you don't have to replace things, you know, if it comes to products, or actually the payoff, right? If I'm investing in high quality food or products that go onto my skin and things like that, things that actually absorb into my body and reduce the likelihood of certain types of diseases, or things that would actually cost me time, money, and energy on the other side, it's actually worth that upfront cost. Similarly with relationships, actually investing in appreciating quality relationships allows you to save time and energy and all those sorts of things that come with investing in people and that kind of exchange. So an appreciation for quality is something that I have developed in my late 20s. And I only see this getting more and more. Like, I see me really, really leaning into quality of all the things in my life. So another thing that I say is really important for thriving in your late 20s and making the most out of this time is learning how to navigate your professional and personal spaces, and knowing that it might not always be the same. In my late 20s, I feel like I have operated and moved through spaces like I'm meant to be here. Even if the people in the room are richer than me or more successful on paper than me, prettier than me, whatever it is, if I'm in this space, I'm meant to be in this space. If I've managed to get myself in this space, or I've been invited to the space, then I'm meant to be in the space, right? Unless I decide that I don't want to be there, that's different. But like, I think understanding how to navigate these spaces and having the confidence again to be them and occupy them and take up space is really key in your late 20s, because as much as people keep banging on about networking, it is so important, right? Being able to take up space in a physical environment, right? And speak to certain people, not be afraid when somebody who's like, you know, the CEO of a company, you know, approaches you or you approach them. Like, and a lot of this comes down to the art of being able to communicate your ideas, because that's when you will enter these spaces with confidence. And, you know, if you are seeking out professional opportunities, and it's really important that you tap into this. And I know this because in my early 20s, I would class myself as socially anxious. Like, when I had just left kind of uni and was kind of getting into my, like 21, 22, I was awkward for some reason. Like, I was just awkward, and I just overthought everything in social situations. And, you know, you can see when somebody's kind of uncomfortable in a situation, and again, it doesn't really attract the right kind of energy or people. It's actually funny because I think a big reason why I was able to get to where I am today is exposure. I think exposure and practice is what allows you to become more confident in navigating professional spaces and personal spaces, which we kind of will talk a little bit about in a second. But it was when I got my first job as a receptionist, and I was actually forced. Like, talk about exposure therapy. I was a receptionist. It was my job to speak to people, everyone who came in, have a conversation with them, greet them. You know, a lot of these conversations would then go deeper. And I got really comfortable with, like, I can speak to people from kind of anywhere. And I was working in like a Virgin Active, so it's one of the higher gyms or higher priced gyms in the UK. And so I'd have people who were like editors at top newspapers, and then people who were just more chill and, you know, came from maybe more humble backgrounds or whatever it was. But you got a real mix, and you realize people are actually people. And so, like, navigating spaces really comes down to just talking to people. But yeah, in my late 20s, that's just become more refined. And then kind of overlaying that with the fact, though, that how I show up in those spaces isn't necessarily how I need to show up in my personal life, with my relationships and people that are, you know, that know me on a deeper level. I can show up there in one element, and that's fine, and show up in my personal life with my friends, my partner, all that sort of stuff in a different way. It's okay. It's not being inauthentic. They're different people. They're different sets of, you know, energies and groups, and that's okay. Another thing, and of course I'm going to talk about passions because it's me. I'm the multiple passions lady. So I think in your late 20s, you really should lean into hobbies and passions that encourage your evolution or actually kind of fulfill your inner child. So a lot of your early 20s are filled with kind of trying to work out where you fit in society, where you sit in the world, where you sit in your friendship groups, just generally trying to work that out. And so you adopt things that you may think are right for you based on what everyone else is telling you. Kind of going back to that first point I made. But in your late 20s, baby, it's about you. I mean, it's always been about you, but now is the time to do things that pour into you and allow you to evolve and become that higher version of yourself, right? The things that you put off for years, maybe it's to do with art, maybe it's to do with like a physical activity, like a sport, whether it's to do with some sort of community venture, whatever it is, it's time for you in your late 20s to really double down on these sorts of hobbies and skills and passions. For me, it looked like traveling more and like in a kind of different way to when I was younger, maybe my early 20s. It meant art and painting, like, I've spoken about before. I love the ability to just be free, to know that I can try things and it doesn't matter if it's trending, if it's not. Like in my late 20s, I just don't really care about doing things because other people think I should do them. And that comes down to hobbies and skills and passions as well. And that coupled with the fact that in your late 20s, you often have more resources and the ability to tap into these things, I think it's really important that you do. Another thing that I would say is really important in your late 20s is cherishing good relationships, building new connections and forming community. It can feel kind of isolating being in your late 20s if you don't have a huge friendship group. And full transparency, I don't have a huge friendship group. And if you've watched my video on losing friends and gaining new ones, like I've been through, like a lot of us, the loss of friends, people that you thought would be in your life forever. And it's hard, especially when you get to this point in your late 20s. But those people that you do have, cherish those people, make time, but also think about the fact that we're all on our own paths and we're all quite busy. And so if nobody reaches out, if everyone's always waiting for the other person to reach out, because like I said, late 20s, business, career, partner, all this stuff is going on. I'm trying to get my water intake, go to the gym. There's a lot that I'm trying to do. And everyone else is also trying to do that and think about their futures. So yeah, make sure that you're making time for people that matter to you in your late 20s, nourishing and taking care of those relationships. But also don't be afraid to put yourself in situations where you can meet potentially new friends and new connections. And that can be challenging because the older you get, there are less spaces that are set up for this, like school, which is just like a breeding ground for friendships and all that sort of stuff. You don't really have that in uni. So you have to kind of seek that out yourself. And so I would say don't be afraid to do so. Put yourself in really particular spaces though to meet the quality of people that you want, right? Like join members clubs. I recently joined a private members club and have been enjoying that and meeting new people there that are kind of like-minded in terms of entrepreneurship and the things that I want to kind of get out of life. But also, if you feel like you can't find those sorts of communities and spaces, build them yourself. This goes back to executing on your big dreams and pushing forward effectively. I built my community around multi-passionate, ambitious women because I felt like I didn't have one. I felt like there wasn't a community out there that I could just join that was serving the needs and the desires and the want for that community that I had. And so I've been building it. I've been building it with this channel. I've been building it with Rencol and the events that I want to launch that I have and will continue to launch, retreats, all that sort of stuff. I want that. So I'm going to build it. And we have access to crazy resources now. Let's be honest, things that our parents can even have dreamed of when they were our age or our grandparents. We can literally get online, share our interests and attract people to us. If you're in your late 20s and you've been kind of, growing into yourself and it will continue to grow. I have to keep saying this because I just don't want anybody to come for me. I've spoken about 20s before and it wasn't always pretty. But anyway, the point that I'm making is build it. If it doesn't exist, build it. You have the agency to do so, right? You have that, so use it. Now let's talk a little bit about finances, because in your late 20s, things are starting to get, a little bit more serious. If we're being honest, in our early 20s, were we thinking about retirement? Some of you might have been, and honestly, big up to you. A lot of us were just like, I actually was a teenager 2 days ago. Live life. But I think in your late 20s, as you develop in your career, your business, or whatever it is, you do have to get quite conscious about the life that you want and if you're on track for that financially. And so this is where I think it's important to think about, your income. That's one thing. And are you optimizing your income when you are in your 20s and those early stages of life, even in your 30s? You have so much life ahead of you that really making sure that you're maximizing your income generating potential is key. But thinking about what you do when that money comes in, right? Are you investing in certain financial products, right? Putting things away so that if you do want to retire early, maybe at 40, that you're putting those things in place, right? Or if you do want to buy a house, like, you know, things are in place in terms of what you're doing with your savings and your credit score, all that sort of stuff. I do think if you haven't already been thinking about it and you want to thrive in your late 20s and beyond, it's a really key time to start digging into it. One of the final things I want to talk about is refining and presenting your identity capital, which is kind of effectively a long way of saying personal branding, which we've been speaking about on this channel kind of in and out, and which was the topic of my actually event in London. But I think it's really important in your late 20s that you are thinking about how you present to the world so that you can tap into the opportunities that you want. Like, it's just so important in your late 20s. Again, early 20s and teens, you're just kind of working it out. And that's not to say that you cannot be intentional about your personal brand and how you present from your early 20s. But I think in your late 20s, this is almost a non-negotiable. Like, if you want to allow yourself to propel and thrive in this era and beyond again, then you need to be thinking about how you can leverage the way that you present to the world to get the maximal opportunities, right? Like, let's be real. And so I won't, again, spend too much time on this one because I have done multiple videos on this and I will do more. But I found that in my late 20s, tapping into this has allowed me to set myself apart from a lot of other people and, you know, get the things that I want in life in terms of speaking opportunities, career opportunities, you know, relationship opportunities, all that sort of stuff is because about how I show up. The final two things I want to talk about are a little bit more practical, but the first is more about like your personal style effectively, and being in your late 20s and realizing I don't have the energy to dress like people want me to dress. I just don't have it. I don't want to. I'm not comfortable. I want to be comfortable, cute. I want to do what works for me. Like, there was one period of time where I was just like, maybe you should like stop wearing certain types of things, but I knew that that's what I felt comfortable in. Like, I felt like looking at my body and the way that it was set up, like, you know, more A-line kind of dresses that come, like, it was suiting me, but I felt like, oh, maybe I'm not as edgy, or maybe like I don't really match it. In my late 20s now, I'm just like, wear what works for me and what leans into, you know, my qualities and my physical attributes and so forth. Doesn't matter if nobody else is doing it. That kind of youngish energy of my early 20s I've left behind, and I felt like that's really helped me. I have like this dress in about 3 different colors because at this point I'm like, that works for me. I feel confident in that, and again, this confidence impacts the way that you move through the rest of life. And so I'm going to put on clothes that lean into my body type, my interests, and make me feel confident. And I think you should do the same if you're trying to thrive in your late 20s. And I'll close this off with this final point, which is about physical health. And I do think your priorities change, or they should change when you're in your late 20s. And whilst I never have a problem with people being aesthetically driven in terms of their exercise and their, you know, the way that they go about certain things, I think it's an important part of life and biology and, you know, just feeling good. But I do think your priorities change in your late 20s. And if you want to thrive in your late 20s, and you start to think a little bit about more like things like stretching and, you know, mobility and the health of, you know, even your desk, thinking about, you know, is this optimally set up so that I can prevent certain types of injuries that are associated with, you know, the job that I have? Or, you know, can I do certain exercises that are going to require me to, as I've said before, move your body in new ways? And I think really just thinking about the life that you want to live again post these late 20s, and are you setting yourself up for that? The late 20s for me is as much about thriving and enjoying that moment, but you start to switch gears into the setup. That's what I think. If I had to summarize this whole kind of video, it's like, yes, live the best, you know, live your best life right now. But also the setup should be really good and we should be optimizing that setup. Anyway, that's it. I know I've been gone for a while. Sorry guys, but I'm back, babies. So I will see you in the next video.